In the early 1970s, Canada quickly became a world leader in tobacco control. But it was late to the game, as the true pioneers in Britain had been fighting the evils of smoking as far back as 1962, when the Royal College of Physicians released a groundbreaking report that concluded a 35-year-old smoker is twice as likely to die before reaching retirement age than a non-smoker. Fast forward 54 years to another report the RCP released called Nicotine Without Smoke, which can be characterized as a ringing endorsement for e-cigarettes. Joining us today in studio is Linda Bauld, Deputy Director of the UK Centre for Tobacco and Alcohol Policy and co-author of the report Nicotine Without Smoke. And she's also Chair in Behavioural Research for Cancer Prevention at Cancer Research UK, the world's largest independent cancer charity. Linda, thanks for coming on the show. First off, tell us, how has the RCP's position towards nicotine changed since 1962?
I think it's gradually changed. The RCP's priority was always to reduce the harm from smoking, and it started to look at nicotine in around 2005 and published its first report on harm reduction in 2007. And then since then, of course, e-cigarettes have been on the market. They've looked carefully at the evidence, and they've certainly concluded now that e-cigarettes are far safer than smoking.
When you review back, it seemed that the RCP had really kind of hung its hat on addiction for tobacco. And I know that that actually is a problem for e-cigarette supporters because it seems to be an albatross that's hung around their neck when it comes to nicotine.
I think there's misunderstanding, though. I think Professor Michael Russell, who many of us worked with over the years, said that smokers smoke for the nicotine, but they die from the tar. And I think we've equated nicotine with tobacco, and I think in this day and age what we need to do is try and separate the two, and there's quite a task ahead to do that. We have failed adult smokers in many ways. We still have high smoking rates in the US, in Canada and the UK, and we need alternatives for smokers so they can shift to safer products. So we have to balance it, protect children, but also give smokers access to things that will help them, and that's where I think some of the US and possibly the Canadian debate doesn't strike that balance.
Is it a moralist, an absolutist kind of a position?
I think there is something in that. I mean, I prefer to use the term values, and I think there are values around addiction, that people shouldn't be using addictive substances, they shouldn't be spending their money on it, that is irresponsible, and they put nicotine in the same bracket as things like alcohol or illegal drugs, for example. But I think there's a lot of demonization of nicotine, and the main reason for that, of course, is that nicotine has been inextricably linked with tobacco and the tobacco industry. And I think that connection, which we made for many years, basically telling people nicotine was bad, when what we meant was that smoked tobacco was harmful.
Sure, it's good to look at it that way now, but back then, 40, 50 years ago, did it really matter? Just the message was all of it was bad.
I think that it was a simple message to give, and it was very successfully done. But of course, times have really changed. And for me in the work I do, the priority is for fewer people to smoke. And if they can use nicotine safely and stop smoking tobacco, that's good.
So you've got a prominent role at UK Cancer Research.
Yes.
Cancer Research UK. What is that role?
So I'm responsible for advising the charity on their cancer prevention activities. It's a bit like a prevention officer role. And that covers not just tobacco, which of course is the leading preventable cause of cancer, but also things like diet, physical activity, alcohol, etc. We know that in the UK, and it's quite similar in Canada, around 4 in 10 cases of cancer are preventable. So my role with the charity is to invest in research and policy work to prioritize that. So it's prevention rather than cure.
So for smokers and longtime smokers, you smoke every day. The reality is that heart attack is a second away. The monster, though, is the cancer. And you would think that, switching to e-cigarettes would offer some hope against both. Is that not the case?
So Cancer Research UK and the research I do, we think e-cigarettes are very promising. A few years ago, Cancer Research UK was really cautious about electronic cigarettes, very concerned about the evidence. What we've decided to do as an organisation is take a proactive approach. We're commissioning research, talking to researchers, speaking to policymakers, and trying to figure out what is the right balance. And from all the evidence I've looked at so far, I believe that e-cigarettes are more attractive and more appealing than some of the other products that we offer to smokers to stop. So their real promise is in their appeal and their reach. And if they're less harmful, then if we can connect the two, people want to use them, and they're a less risky product, then actually I believe we could help reduce smoking-related cancers by people switching to e-cigarettes.
Public health fought this war against smoking. Why are public health, the very people and organizations that you would think that would be behind e-cigarettes, so anti-e-cigarette?
I think there's a couple of reasons. I think the nicotine issue has confused people, and a lot of people who work in generic public health who don't understand the science around nicotine still equate nicotine with tobacco, so that's the first thing. The second thing is this, as I said, issue around values and addiction being a bad thing, but probably the crucial one is the involvement of the tobacco industry. Now, we spent decades dealing with the product that the tobacco industry manufactures, which kills 1 in 2 of its regular users. Public health is very committed to working against that industry, and of course the industry has not been trustworthy in the past. And so I think that people are very fearful or not trusting of e-cigarettes because some of them are manufactured by the tobacco industry.
We've got 2 videos that the Canadian Cancer Society has released, commercials, in conjunction with the government of British Columbia, our home province here. Let's just take a look at that.
Hey dude, check this out.
Whoa, is that stuff safe?
Yeah. I mean, so far so good. Just check out my glow belly.
Awesome.
Hey, what you doing?
You know, just chilling.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like a good idea.
Why not? It's fine. It's kind of warm, actually.
Really? Okay, let me see. Oh, yeah.
So impacts of vaping on youth are unknown. Canadian Cancer Society. Good message? Well, with the oohs and the eggs involved.
Yeah, I think, I mean, the Canadian Cancer Society has done some fantastic work and has a really valuable role to play in tackling cancer in Canada. I think I would prefer our fellow cancer societies, in terms of information campaigns, to be focusing on evidence-based campaigns that send clear messages to the public. I don't think that statement is entirely correct. So the impacts of vaping on youth are unknown. The impacts of vaping on adult smokers, certainly in the short term, are known. We also know the impacts of nicotine use in young people. The longer term impacts we might not know, but I would be concerned that money is being invested on a campaign which may not necessarily be evidence-based, and also might confuse people. It may make adult smokers think that vaping is bad, and that's the wrong message to send.
So the ads that we just looked at, they're misleading.
They're potentially going to confuse people. They're going to confuse people in 2 ways. They're going to mix up the message about protecting children with the other message, which is that e-cigarettes are dangerous and so therefore adult smokers shouldn't use them. And we have to distinguish between those 2 messages. That's where we're doing people a disservice.
So is it on purpose?
I don't think so. I think this is a really well-meaning organization that's done some fantastic work. I think e-cigarettes have confused professionals as well as the public. I'd like to see the Canadian Cancer Society working with us and with others to look at the evidence on e-cigarettes and just send evidence-based messages to the public.
In the context of the battle against smoking, with the same organizations now in their battle against vaping, can you please describe to our viewers the term swarm effect?
Well, the swarm effect is where you have like a swarm of bees, many people coalescing on the same issue, trying to attack whatever they see as a threat.
And this is what public health was trained to do against smoking.
And they do, and we, yes, absolutely. In terms of tackling smoking, huge progress has been made. And yes, I am concerned that we are treating e-cigarettes like tobacco, including my public health colleagues in a number of countries, and e-cigarettes are not tobacco. We need a different frame. E-cigarettes, for me, are about tobacco harm reduction. The Royal College of Physicians report is about tobacco harm reduction. It's a new frame. I know it's difficult for people to accept. We've never really done harm reduction in tobacco control, so that probably explains some of the resistance, but we need to do it now.